guys, Zeigus here, and today I'm bringing you a nice little Ursa gameplay, and as always, I've chosen to random, as I'm probably always going to do, as long as I play AP. And there are a lot of things that happen in this game that most Ursa players should get familiar with so that they can actually improve their Ursa gameplay. So unfortunately, I did this whole thing live, but somehow I must have tapped my record button in the process, and unfortunately I lost it midway through. But anyways, as most of you probably already know, in every case, Ursa wants to rush a Vladimir's offering as quickly as possible. Now, if you don't know why, I'll tell you. Ursa has a mechanic called Fury Swipes, and as you can see in the tooltip here, every attack that he performs, he does additional damage, right? So say I attack for a base of 50, I hit somebody once, I'm now doing, X amount of damage according to what level it is, more than what I was doing before. So this stacks indefinitely, meaning I can actually do crazy amounts of damage so long as whatever is in front of me still has health to compensate for the damage they're taking. So tying this back into Vladimir's offering, you pick this up because you progressively do more damage, so you actually steal more life. And where this really comes into play is you want to your goal as Ursa is to solo Roshan as quickly as possible. This is what you want to do. It is a huge amount of gold for your team. It also is a great source of levels, and you pick up an Aegis in the process. So this is the goal of Ursa in your typical game. Now you see right now I am going to be jungling the small camp. At around 51, 52 seconds, somewhere about there, you're going to want to pull this camp because it's the easiest camp and it will grant you easy gold and free experience. So you want to stack this camp, and I believe the Null Assassin's one of the worst camps that you can get, along with the Ghost camp, the ones that freeze you upon attack. But that's besides the point. Generally, you're going to want to do this no matter what. It is the easiest camp to do, and you should always stack the very first camp. Now, something that people who jungle usually avoid doing is they don't really gank the lane that they're next to, right? People just see it as they're playing a PvE type game where you just play by yourself, you're farming away, and the team is responsible for performing well bottom. That's not what you want to do here. You always want to see, if you see the opportunity, in which we're going to see in like a few seconds here, you always want to come and try to support the team and try to help them succeed in the lane, right? If you're able to pick up assist gold, or in this case first blood, that's going to be huge into getting that quick farm that you want to get on Ursa. The faster you get that Vlad's offering, the faster his farm gets, because the main problem Ursa has in the beginning of the game is he has a difficult time with regeneration, right? He loses health consistently over each camp, which he doesn't restore after every camp until you get some lifesteal. So the goal to farm well is to get that Vlad's offering as quickly as possible, and that is done not by sitting doing neutrals all day in the jungle, but is best accomplished by a nice symmetry between ganking the bottom lane and sitting in the jungle. Right? We don't want to go, overboard with the ganking. I believe in this game I actually end up ganking bottom just the one time. Because what happens here is we see that this lane has quite a few escape mechanisms. Sand King obviously being able to burrow strike out, while also being able to sandstorm and go invisible. Unfortunately, no one buys dust, so it makes it very difficult for me to gank the lane at this point in the game. So had the lane setup been different, where, for example, we had Crystal Maiden, who actually left the lane a short time into it. Sit there, I can easily kill her. No problem. But in this specific situation, you don't want to waste your time ganking something that isn't, going to bear some fruit, if you will. So right now you see me employing a very popular tactic that is popularized in Dota 1. This is choke point jungling. This usually works best in the harder camps. It's usually done with nakes, actually. But in a situation where someone stacked the camp like this, really the only way to go about doing this without getting completely reamed in the process is getting into a choke point. Also, I'll probably touch upon this when I do the next video, but this is usually done with either a Quelling Blade or some Tangos, because what you want to do primarily is stack one unit right in front of you so that only one thing can attack you at once, rather than the two that you just saw there. So another thing that I want to touch upon is what I just did. You want to check the runes, right? You're going to be in the jungle, and you'll have easy access to the top rune if you are in the dire jungle, or the bottom rune if you're in the sentinel jungle. So what you want to do is, number one, you saw me, I didn't directly pick it up. I made sure that bottom had charges in the bottom, and I asked, do you want the regen bottom, right? Bottle users typically get priority. In some cases, they'll say, no, they don't want it, which is why I picked up the regen in that situation. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to keep things that I've mentioned so far in mind when you're jungling, right? This applies to basically any jungle, not specifically Ursa. You want to keep an eye on the bottom lane. Is it gankable? If yes, then you want to go ahead and try to set up a gank with whoever's in that lane. If not, make sure you keep your farm as high as possible, right? It's not always an option to gank bottom. Second thing, you want to check that bottom rune consistently, right? If you prevent their mid from getting the rune, great, you just prevented them from possibly ganking bottom, or TPing up to gank top, or preventing them from, reaching the harass mid performed on them. In any situation, you just granted mid and whoever may have been ganked a huge favor there. Also, on top of performing such a positive benefit to your team, you screwed with the experience gain because they had to leave the lane and consequently lose experience. Also, you wasted their farm. So you lowered their farm and you lowered their experience gain. It is like a huge benefit, like really big benefit, when you can prevent them from getting the rune, and especially if you bait them into picking one up. So you see here that I finally got my Vlads, and actually on the courier right now is smoke, and I kind of forgot that the courier doesn't auto send it to you. What you have to do is, give it to yourself, which is kind of annoying, but that's okay, because as Ursa, you generally want to go into Roshan with around 400, 450 HP, somewhere thereabouts. You might ask why. You might get really unlucky, right? Roshan has the ability to stun you, and if he chains that together, you can die. It's not foolproof that you're going to live 100% when you do Rosh, right? As long as you have the Vlad's offering. I mean, it's a low chance of it happening, but if it happens, man, are you screwed. Right, that alerts them you're going to be at Roshan. That tells them Roshan's HP is more than likely low, and it tells them to defend that area of the map. They're going to be placing sentries and wards. You better believe that they're going to do that, and that is just something you do not want to get put into. So always, as a general rule of thumb, 400 HP. Now, something you saw me do is I got a Smoke of Deceit. Smoke of Deceit, what that does is it makes me go invisible for a set amount of time. If I happen to come next to a player during that time, it automatically gets removed, right? So this is what you want to do to perform the Roshan kill 100% of the time. Most people, we didn't see it happen in this particular game, but they put sentries around the Roshan area whenever Ursa's around. So if you just happily just waltz on in there without being invisible, they're going to say, hey, he's doing Roshan, let's go stop him. Or, hey, he's doing Roshan, let's wait 20 seconds. Roshan's going to be really low, kill off Ursa, and pick up the Roshan kill, right? So always go for the smoke into Rosh. That's the safest way to do it. And just a few moments ago, you saw me lose the Aegis there. While that is, not preferred, I mean, I just got unlucky with Invoker and Sand King being in that area at the same time when Roshan happened to die. But the main thing that you get out of Roshan, especially the very first attempt, is basically reliant on giving your team some gold to work with on top of getting the levels from him. So it's not that big of a deal, to lose it in that situation. I mean, like I said, not preferred, but don't think that, you've really lost something of value here. So not that big of a deal. So you're going to see me in a few seconds here try to go in on bottom, but I realize, all right, it's over. I'm not going to get them time. So I turn around and continue on farming. In situations like that, if you see the team battle is already over and you can benefit from more farm, then go for it, right? So after my Vlads, you saw me pick up phase boots. So the biggest problem with Ursa, and anyone can tell you this, and if you don't know, that's all right, is he has a huge problem with mobility, as most melee heroes tend to have. But in most situations, melee heroes have some sort of way to, close the gap. So Chaos Knight, for example, he has the ability to bring someone into close quarters with him at his will, right? He has the ability to do that. Ursa, on the other hand, all he can do is run up to somebody, right? So that makes him vulnerable to slows, stuns, whatever. He's going to have a very difficult time getting into melee range of somebody and staying there, right? So phase boots is, a partial answer to that. It's going to get you some of the way there. It's going to give you the mobility that you need, after the initiation of the team battle, where people are generally in one spot trying to kill each other. That's going to help you close the gap. So put that aside for a second. Here we see that the tower is extremely low and we're getting pushed out. So what I want to do is I want to knock out Nyx very quickly, and I see that tower is really low and it's in deny range, so I want to knock out that tower. Even if you end up dying in this situation, you want to make sure you get that tower kill, right? If you die as a result, but you prevent it from being denied, that was well worth your death, and you should take that gamble every single time it shows itself, right? The loss of gold is much more if it gets denied than if one person dies, right? Because when it denies, you lose a significant amount of money. When you die, especially earlier in the game, not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. So, going back to the mobility problem, that makes Ursa semi-weak at this point in the game. He still has the ability to burst things down, and depending on your team setup, that could be really, not practical. It's not really going to happen. But if you have like a good amount of stuns, which this team does, in the form of Rubik, Potom Arrow, Shackle Shot, basically everyone has a stun, right? It'd be perfect, You'd be able to, have some dominance in the lane without the mobility items that I'm going to talk about. So the next item that I want to pick up is Blink Dagger. Why Blink Dagger? Why is this good on Ursa? Blink Dagger enables you to, as the name implies, blink around the place, right? So this really synergizes very well with Ursa's Earth Shock, right? What this ability does is it slows and does damage, right? So slow, we obviously know that this is something we want to do because Ursa is a melee hero and he does more damage the more he attacks, right? So that has huge synergy there, and it closes the gap between enemy heroes, which is Ursa's main problem, instantly. So by far the best item to get on Ursa, and essentially mandatory, is Blink Dagger. Now, you do have the option, which some people like to go for, is Shadow Blade, right? Shadow Blade makes the hero invisible, and if they can't see you coming, you could close the gap really easily, right? In most cases, I tend to shy away from Shadow Blade. There's two main issues with it, right? Two big issues. Number one, it costs a lot more. It's 3,300 gold. That's a big investment, right? When compared to the 2,100 gold of the Blink Dagger. So that's a problem. Number two, this type of initiation can be stopped in a couple of different ways. Number one, they can dust you, right? They can preemptively dust. This usually doesn't happen. This is the rarest of the three situations. But it's possible. You know, you can get preemptively dusted, especially if they see your team coming in or converging on them. Another problem with it is sentry wards, right? People are going to say, Ursa's got invis. We need to stop him. We're going to put it in a defensible position, and we're going to see him coming before he even shows up. So right here, we're going to see an example of Ursa and good stun synergy, right? Anything at this point in the game, I may have not mentioned this, this is Ursa's prime time, right? This is when Ursa is at the peak of his power. This is when you want to go with your team and you want to make those kills happen. You want to force those team fights. You want to start pushing towers. You want to run the game, and you basically want to run it now. Like I said, this is the peak of his gameplay, around where you get Blink Dagger, right? That's when he's at his strongest. Usually you want that to happen if you farm well, which is the example in this game. You can get it relatively early, right? You know, the earlier the better. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to get this set up at latest, you know, 20 minutes, preferably around the 18-minute mark. You should be right at this point in farm, right? So, you know, around there is when you want to start doing this strat. If you get it 25 minutes, you know, Ursa's lost most of his strength, or a good majority of it. You won't be able to, you know, necessarily tool people in the way that, you know, you've seen me, you know, kill Nyx in not even a second and a half there. So going back to the Shadow Blade dilemma, sentry wards, like I mentioned, and preemptive dust, both can really screw you over. Now, the final one is when you push for towers. You obviously can't initiate on a tower with invisibility because, you know, they can see you, right? That's going to be an issue. You're not going to be able to use it in that fashion, and oftentimes that's what the majority of the game is. You know, very rarely do team battles typically happen outside in a area for no reason, right? Unless someone gets completely caught out of position. So Shadow Blade also weak in that manner, right? Some people like it because, hey, I can use it to escape. Well, you can counter that escape mechanism with 180 gold, right? In the form of dust. So, in my opinion, Shadow Blade, not the best solution. You can get away with it in lower tier games where people aren't so much likely to buy dust or sentries. But, you know, generally speaking, you're going to get countered if you get that in a mid to high tier game. So, after you get, you know, your core, which is the phase boost of Vlad's offering and the Blink Dagger, you're going to start to go for the luxury items. Now, you have a few options in this situation. Some people love to go the Bashers and eventually the Abyssal Blade route, which is great. That is a completely viable way to play Ursa. You know, that works. Especially if you have a lack of stuns on your team, which isn't the case in my situation. So I'm going to say, hey, I got enough stuns. I don't necessarily need Bashers to operate, if you will. So I'm going to shy away from that item choice, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to opt to go not butterfly, but heart in this case. You might be saying, oh, Zeigus, that's the dumbest thing ever. You got Nyx on the opposite team. That's completely true. In almost every single situation, you do not buy a heart against Nyx. just doesn't happen. If you don't know, Nyx has the ability to absorb health according to how much HP the target has. So let's say he can absorb 10, and this is hypothetical, 10% HP damage and absorption against 100 HP, right? That means he's gonna gain 10 life. So that means the more you increase your HP, the more he heals and the more damage he does to you as a result. So always a bad idea to do this against the Nyx. But why am I doing this in this situation? We, as you can see in the scoreboard, have a significant gold lead, right? Their farm isn't anywhere near close to ours. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna force a heart, because what I want to do eventually is I want to get a gem. So I want that survivability, right? I want to be able to survive against their team. So what I opted to do here is go for the heart for the gem, so I can prevent, you know, Bounty Hunter, Invoker, Sand King from escaping, right? 3/5 of their team have invisibility mechanics that they can use to escape and stop us from killing them. And I'm going to try to counter that with getting the survivability needed to not lose that gem. You could argue that you can also go the butterfly route, which is, in this scenario, if you wanted to tank up and you are not so far ahead, that is what you want to go, right? Butterfly, a really good item on Ursa. It will, you know, give you that effective HP, right? It's going to give you that straight boost in HP that we see in Heart, but what it will do is it will increase your EHP, which I'll cover that maybe sometime later in a mechanics video if I get around to it. But it will boost your effective health. So what that means is, in like very general terms, you have 1500 health, but when you consider evasion, you actually have more than that because you dodge an attack. But the mechanics for that go much deeper than that. But you know, that's just a quick summary of what that is. So, you know, after discussing the heart thing, I actually kind of regressed for a moment there. Depending on the team you're against, and typically this happens, you're going to want to get a BKB. I kind of forgot to mention that, you know, that is typically part of Ursa's core, and, you know, that is what you kind of want to build next before your luxury items. Or maybe some people, you know, squeak in that Bashers before the BKB, but again, it all depends on what you're going against. But generally speaking, BKB is what you get next. But, you know, stressing this again, it depends on your what you're going against. In this case, we got Crystal Maiden, Invoker, Sand King, and open wounds from Nyx that we want to kind of stop, right? That's kind of really annoying to deal with, especially on Ursa. So BKB, very solid choice for the 5 heroes. Do something that's really annoying to me. You know, I want to kind of get rid of that for 10 seconds on the first pop during the team battle. I don't want to worry about that for a while. So BKB, good decision, right? But going back to kind of the more basics thing, something that I kind of didn't mention, Roshan spawns in, as most of you know, 10 minutes. When you do Ursa, you want to note when you killed Roshan so you can be back there in 10 minutes. So why is this important? Why is this important? First of all, when you go do Roshan, right at that 10-minute mark, as soon as he spawns, you're there to kill him. People don't necessarily think about Roshan right on that 10 minutes. You are going to have the higher tier bracket games where people are going to know when Roshan died and when he's going to come back up. But in that middle to like high-low tier, people are not going to have any idea of when he's respawning exactly. They're going to have a general idea, you know, maybe 15 minutes in, they'll be like, oh yeah, Roshan is probably back up. But for the most part, people are going to forget about it, and they're seldomly going to remember he's back up in T-minus 4.5 seconds, right? They're just not going to do that. So you have the easiest time to snipe a quick Roshan kill and pick up that Aegis, right? So say you forgot when that happened, you forgot to note when he comes back up, you can do one of two things. You can guesstimate, you know, essentially when you killed him, right? This only kind of works if you remember, you know, when you killed him and within like a 1 minute mark, or if you're lucky enough to where you didn't die in 10 minutes and the Aegis just expires, which as you read in the tooltip there, it disappears in 10 minutes, you'll know that 10 minutes obviously have passed and he's back up. So on that same note, on the third kill of Roshan, he drops a cheese. You're going to see that in just a bit in this gameplay, where I will go for him and, you know, he drops a cheese. And as that happens, no one was, when I initiated on Roshan, if I recall correctly, no one was there with me, right? People kind of forget that cheese kind of drops sometimes. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that there is someone there to pick up the cheese so that it doesn't just sit on the floor and maybe get sniped by the enemy team. So make sure that you have somebody there with you. Obviously, you could solo him at that point, but you know, you want someone there just to pick up the cheese. So in this situation, we see that they're kind of like pushing out. We're kind of in that awkward phase where, you know, no one's really pushing. This is where, if this happens in your game, this is where you want to tell your team, yo, we should push. We should, you know, start to end the game, right? Or make the difference in farming bigger. So the longer you leave the team alone, right, where you do not initiate and they avoid contact, this gives them a chance to recover their farm. And this is something you want to avoid doing. When you're so far ahead, you want to, at all costs, keep that difference. And what you want to do is you want to play efficiently and expand the discrepancy between, you know, the experience and the gold. So you want to keep the pressure constantly on, because if they force a team battle to go in, right, if they choose to defend, we have the clear advantage. But we'll win the team battle unless we do something like catastrophically wrong, and we'll easily win, right? Right here you saw that there's a bit of a mistime there. So when you have people who, like Chaos Knight, for example, can suck somebody in or blink, you want to coordinate those, right? You want to coordinate the stuns that kind of displace people. So what just happened, you know, doesn't screw up everything. Had this been a closer game, it could have been a pretty big deal, right? That I wasted my Blink Dagger as well as my Earth Shot. But since we're so far ahead, it doesn't really matter in this case. But generally, you want to synergize with your team. So as you saw there, we didn't quite come up on top in that previous team battle. Fortunately for us, though, I was able to survive. On top of that, I also had the Aegis. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to go for that tower kill. I wanted to get the tower down. And I didn't think that, you know, they would have the balls, so to speak, to kind of initiate on me, knowing that I didn't pop BKB on that last team battle because I didn't need to, right? No one used anything barring the very last 2 seconds there that really hampered my ability to perform my job. You know, just because you have BKB doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use the BKB, right? Generally speaking, people are gonna, you know, call you an idiot for saying that. But if you have like an understanding of what heroes can do and how quickly you can kill them, you can, if you rewind this video, you can see that I clearly did not need to use BKB at all in that situation. I can burst Invoker down so quickly that he really can't invoke anything to stop me, right? If I popped BKB before I went in there, it would have been a waste. Nyx, same story. Not necessarily because I could kill him so quickly, but because no one was there to stop me from, you know, following him through and killing him. He kind of canceled out the open wounds with my Earthshock there. So it wasn't a big deal. I didn't need to pop BKB. Had I blinked in and then he open wounds me and he wasn't, and I didn't have Earthshock to compensate, that could have been a suitable time for me to pop BKB. On top of that, I had Chaos Knight right behind me. So had things gone, you know, south, if you will, I did have the backup there to, you know, finish off the job. So just because you have BKB doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it, right? generally speaking, in most situations, this is not the case, right? You do not want to pretend like, oh, well, I know X and X hero and Y hero, they're not gonna be able to, stop me from, killing Z, for example. Unless you have complete vision and you're really coordinated, that's not the case. Usually you're gonna want to pop BKB beforehand, or like literally the millisecond that you blink in. But just popping the idea in your head, you don't always have to use it. Because in that situation, had our team performed better in the team battle, I had an Aegis still, and that BKB pop would have been much more useful and much more fruitful if I used it in the the second part of the team battle that may have happened there when we were pushing the racks and they inevitably had to defend, right? So it could have been much more useful in that situation. So as you can see there, I lost my Aegis, and I'm telling my team, let's kind of back it up a little bit. Roshan's back up. We probably have the chance to go ahead and do Roshan, pick up that cheese, and then we'll be able to push in. At the same time, I have enough money to pick up the Reaver, right? So again, touching back on the Reaver choice, I'm way, way, way more farmed, as well as the team, than Nyx. Nyx, generally speaking, does not have that much farm, right? He doesn't really have any items, if I recall correctly. Versus the the armlet that he had and the Midas. So not too much farm there. He's not a huge threat, and the biggest problem with Nyx, much like Ursa, is that he has a problem with mobility. He doesn't have his mobility item yet. We're okay. We can go hard because we can kite him, right? Especially because of a team that has 4 of the 5 heroes that have stuns. So there, you see me pop BKB. I noticed that there are 3 heroes that could possibly screw with me, right around me. And unfortunately, I picked up the cheese there. I wasn't able to pick up the Aegis, but fortunately for me, Windrunner was there, and I told her to come with me so that we can, pick up both at the same time. Unfortunately, I end up dying in that situation. It was basically a 3v1 at the time in which I actually started ramping up my damage and Roshan had been dealt with. So, not the best situation to have happened, but okay. We still got the Roshan experience, we got the Roshan kill, we got the Aegis, and we got the cheese. And in the end, it turned out to be a clean split of 3 for 3. And their 3 being slightly more valuable than our 3 because they lost 3 important heroes, that being Invoker, Bounty Hunter, and Nyx, while we lost Rubik, which is not so much important, and 2 carries, right? Ursa and Chaos Knight. So, taking a quick overview of what happened there, we came out definitely on top. Not as on top as we'd like, we'd prefer that, we retain the Aegis and the cheese, but we kind of prevent them from being able to kill Roshan. In worst case scenario, they somehow get a comeback going, and now they have the cheese and the Aegis, in which case they kind of have like 2 people who could possibly die and come back, and quite possibly make a huge comeback in that situation. So we still got quite a few hidden benefits, if you will, from getting Roshan out of the map and gone for another 10 minutes. So what happens here is that we've basically solidified our lead. There's no outside factor that can somehow pull them back into this game. Even though they're underfarmed, an Aegis and a cheese play a significant role in team battles, right? They are very, very strong items, and they can easily, without a doubt, change the path that a team battle would take if one team has those 2 as opposed to a team that doesn't, despite being more farmed. So in this situation, we want to gather up and kind of push as quickly as possible. Touching back on we want to use our farm, use our level advantage to end the game as quickly as possible. So here we see that we caught CM out of position, and luckily for us, we were able to get a shackle shot right after the CM drop. So now they're in a really bad position. they cannot really defend anymore, right? So this is the prime time of where we want to go in and take that tower out. Also, you notice that I didn't use VKB there. You might ask, well, you didn't catch really anybody that far out, really. People were there, people were able to assist. Now, the rationale behind this was that they were going to be in a panicked state, right? They saw CM get initiated on. Their first reaction is, crap, CM just got bursted down in like literally half a second. We should better run. It's a 4v5 situation, or 3v5 if, I'm not quite sure if they were all there. I didn't quite notice, but generally speaking, when that happens, whether they have 5 there or 3 there, they're gonna say in their minds, crap, we need to get the hell out of here. Let's run away, right? The first reaction is, especially in the low to high-low mid bracket there, they're not gonna have the thought that, yo, let's initiate right away. So we're not gonna pop the BKB, and Nyx coincidentally getting shackle shotted at the same time kind of also was a considering factor there to whether or not I wanted to pop it directly after CM chopping. So, it came out to where I made the correct decision, and really I want to touch upon this again. Don't do this unless you're really comfortable in the way that team battles are going to play out. If you're starting out, it's probably a better idea for you to just use BKB and don't forget the consequences, forget the thought process that goes behind popping BKB, right? So just go ahead and just straight pop it. As you can see in this game, I didn't really get to the point where I needed to use the heart / the gem. We were okay. We didn't need it. So, in that case, if you were to maybe go in a stalemate kind of game, first of all, like I said, we don't want to get a heart against snakes. Never do that unless you're in a unless you carefully consider what you're doing, right? So typically that's a bad idea. So in this case, we could have either went for a Bashers, and then at the end, Abyssal Blade, which is very useful because heroes tend to have magic immunity towards the end of the game, and Abyssal Blade can be a big factor in kind of mitigating that. Or we could have went Butterfly, which the best case if you want to tank up a little bit against snakes, right? So we had those options. And that about sums up what I wanted to talk about Ursa. I'm sure I've missed something here or there, and I've probably made a few mistakes in this gameplay. But, I don't claim to be the best player, but I do believe I have an understanding of the game. So I think that the thought process behind it is sound. Some of you may disagree, and that's definitely your right to do so, right? This is just my opinion, and I'm kind of just trying to help out the newer players. Obviously, the higher tier players, I don't think that you're really going to get anything out of videos, because higher tier players, it's not really a problem with knowledge. They already understand the mechanics of the game. What happens is that what they do is they need to apply it to their skill level. So just the basic clicking, reaction time, that's what they need to work on. But anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you guys felt that this was enjoyable, and I'll see you guys in the next VOD.